You're now listening to the Wandering Buffalo podcast with your hosts, Andrew Chang and
Vince Taylor.
Hello and welcome to the Wandering Buffalo podcast, a show on the Built-In Buffalo Network. You are tuning in to the first Thursday, well, I guess not the first Thursday episode here on the Wandering Buffalo podcast, but we recently split our episode into, or our show into two segments. So we're going to do a game recap on Wednesday, and today on Thursday's episodes, we're going to do our game previews. Normally, I'm joined by my co-host Justin Goddard, but due to some technical difficulties, we have a very special guest. You might know him if you've heard of us, and you should know him if you haven't. It's Vince Taylor of the Buffalo on the Brain podcast, also a part of the Built-In Buffalo Network. How are you doing tonight?
I am always doing much better than I deserve, and it's just a pleasure to get to spend some time on the Wandering Buffalo because I pump you guys up all the time. You guys are one of my favorite podcasts, and I don't know if you guys know this or not, but you're kind of building a little bit of a reputation for yourself as good dudes out there in Twitter land too. So it's just a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, that is some high praise, and man, I know Justin and I can speak. Well, I can speak for Justin and Jake, the executive producer here, that we hold you in high. We have you on a high shelf in terms of standards. So we're trying. We like to think we're chasing after you, but it's great to have you on the show, and especially this one because we're going to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs matchup here on Sunday Night Football. So normally what we're going to do, well, what Justin and I do here is we're going to talk about how the Chiefs are currently looking, what the media thinks of them, what we want to see, what we don't want to see, and eventually at the end of this episode, we're going to give our game predictions. Nothing out of left field for you, I'm pretty sure. But before we get into anything, where can the people find you and your work, Vince?
I am at Podcast Vince, and you can find me every Monday right here on this network. Podcast Buffalo on the Brain comes out on Mondays.
Perfect. And you can always find us on most social media and podcasting platforms by searching up the Wandering Buffalo podcast. As I mentioned, we're going to split into two segments. So Wednesday's game review, and then Thursday's game preview. This episode might come out a little late on YouTube, so you know, it is what it is. Technical difficulties kind of held us back. But that's not what we're here to talk about, Vince. We're here to talk about the week, was it 5 now? 5? Yeah, week 5 matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. This game's going to be on Sunday Night Football, NBC. I love their work. It's going to be in Missouri, Arrowhead Stadium at 8:20. Allegedly, it's supposed to be 60 degrees with 48% chance of rain and 7-mile-per-hour winds. I know the rain kind of played a factor in the game against the Texans, but you know, not too much of a factor because we blew them out of the water. How are you feeling about this potential rain forecast for this game?
Well, I think it's a little bit early. So I don't know. When I look at the weather forecast for a week ahead and it says it's going to rain, it's always wrong this far out. So I feel like there's still a little bit of window where it can change. But assuming that it doesn't, you know, I don't know. I feel like this is not the same Bills team that we had last year. And I know the Chiefs are a bit down right now, but I'm not buying into that a lot because we've said that about the Patriots for so many years. When they had a slow start, we always want to write them off. This Chiefs game is going to be the same thing. And the rain's going to affect Patrick Mahomes too. Right. I think we actually have the edge in wide receiver. So I'm feeling fairly optimistic about this game, which is not usually like me.
Right. And I'm going to key you in on something that Justin said before you and I jumped on this recording here tonight, and I can't wait to get your response on it. It's his game prediction and his thought process behind it. But as you mentioned, this Chiefs team right now isn't, their record at least, doesn't really reflect who they are. It's like, I know what they can be, so I guess we're just got to start with their most recent game. They beat the Eagles a score of 42-30, And I was at a bar here in downtown Rochester, and one of my friends is a huge Philadelphia Eagle fan. He's from Allentown, so it's like 30 minutes south of or north of Philadelphia. And he was so excited because the game was close, and then he just got dead quiet as Mahomes, started sprinkling in his magic. And I'll just say this, I don't want to feel like my friend did at Sunday night, like towards midnight. That's not how I want to cap off the end of my week. But, this team right now is currently fourth in, I believe, they're fourth in the AFC West and ninth in general in the AFC Conference. I'm going to echo what you said here. This record does not really show who they are as a team, and I don't think they've played their best football yet. Which is funny because I also don't think the Buffalo Bills have played their best football yet, in terms of offense at least. Defense, like that, it looks like everything's clicking on cylinders, but I think this is a good opportunity for both teams to really showcase what they got underneath the hood. It's kind of like that Fast and the Furious thing where they just look at each other and they hit the NOS button. Like, I don't know which car is going to win here, but I know there's something underneath the hood that I got to look out for.
Yeah, and for the Bills, yes, we know we're a good team because we were a good team last year, 13-3 AFC Championship game. If we didn't have that season, we might be feeling differently about this crop of Buffalo Bills because who have we really beat? Mm-hmm. And that matters to some degree. Yes, we have 2 shutouts. Shutouts are hard to do in the NFL. One's against the Texans, when basically a third-string quarterback. Mm-hmm. That counts too, right? It's still a shutout, even if it is a lesser. It counts a little bit less in my mind, but it still counts. This is a really big test because we've not faced an offense like Kansas City yet this year. So how much better are we? And I don't know how you feel, Andrew, but I lived in the playoff drought, and we had 17 years of moral victories. I'm done with that. I don't want that anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all I know in terms of Bills football all throughout my life has kind of started from Trent Edwards and on, and J.P. Lossman and so on and so forth. So all I know is L's. So last season was completely crazy for me, and I'm sure that's crazy for you too, but I just never thought as a Bills fan I knew it was eventually going to happen, but in my, worst place in my mind in terms of a Bills fan, I never thought that this day would actually come where my team would be a darling of the NFL and we would get all these primetime matchups, and our quarterback was regarded as one of the best in the league. So I'm ready for this matchup, and we got to start by talking about this Chiefs team, and we got a list here of strengths and weaknesses courtesy of Sportskeeda, specifically their writer Henrique Bolillo, and we're going to go strength by strength here, or down the list, and tell you what their strengths are. So up first, it's coaching. No surprise here. Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo, and Eric Bieniemy. Andy Reid is legit one of the most winningest coaches of all time. I'm pretty sure he's got I might be wrong here, but I know he's got over 100 wins with the Eagles, and he might have over 100 with the Chiefs, which I'm pretty sure no one has really done that before, or he's in a small group of people who can say they've done that. And he's just got a nose for crazy good offenses, and he can stack weapons on weapons. Eric Bieniemy, he was a hot head coaching candidate at the end of last year's cycle, which I'm still surprised he didn't get a job, kind of for the same reasons why Leslie Frazier didn't get a job, but I'm very okay with us having Leslie Frazier, but I just don't know how Eric didn't get a job. And then Steve Spagnuolo, he's been in the league, head coach experience, defensive coordinator, like for a long time. He knows what he's doing out there. Although this season it seems like they could use a little more from that defensive side of the football. How do you feel about this coaching staff in terms of their strengths?
Yeah, Andy Reid is famous, just one of the legendary offensive minds in football. What he did way back even in Green Bay with Brett Favre. And even before he had Patrick Mahomes, he was having success with Alex Smith. And I don't know if you remember this, but Alex Smith was a bust. He was a washout. He was pretty much done. Now, he had maybe 1 or 2 good years in San Francisco, but he was a bust for all intents and purposes for where he was picked. Andy Reid was able to get a lot out of him. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of crossing routes, a lot of short passes. I think they had the one year where I don't think they threw a touchdown pass to their wide receivers or something like that, but they were still able to score points. Andy Reid is one of the best offensive minds in today's NFL. So, and he has Patrick Mahomes, is making Patrick Mahomes better. Is Patrick Mahomes if he doesn't go to Kansas City? I guess we'll never know, but I don't know. Steve Spagnuolo, I believe, was he on the Giants staff when they won a Super Bowl? He was a defensive coordinator. Yeah. He
coached against, I think, both 42 and 46 Super Bowls. I don't know. I know it's 42, but that was the year that the Patriots were undefeated and they lost the big one, which I was so happy about.
Everybody outside of Boston was like shouting in the streets, and Boston was, I don't know. All they have to make themselves feel better was 6 Super Bowls, I guess, but we felt good there.
I felt great about that. L. So Steve Spagnuolo, you get a thumbs up in my book, no matter what, for what you did to the Patriots twice, I believe. So I'm cool with that.
The second one was actually here in Indy.
Oh yeah, I do remember that, and it almost kind of ended. Well, not in the same way, but the ball was in Brady's hand, and he couldn't finish the job, which is cool. So you mentioned Mahomes being paired with Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy being almost, the sum of their parts, or the amount that they're able in terms of offense to create doesn't equal to some of their parts. I think when you combine those three pieces together, you get a crazy level in terms of offense. And we got to talk about Mahomes now, because we already talked about Bieniemy, Andy Reid, but Mahomes, man, he's Mahomes. He's so far, I'm pretty sure, and these numbers might be a little outdated since Sunday, but he's got 940 passing yards. He's averaging 8.5 yards per attempt. He's got a 70% completion percentage, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, a quarterback rating of 111.7, and he's just been on fire since he's entered the league. And how are the Bills supposed to game plan around a guy like Mahomes? We've seen what they did in the past, drop into coverage. That just didn't work too well for them. And then eventually they shifted to man coverage in the AFC Championship game, and that really didn't go well for them. And it just seemed like Mahomes was able to do Mahomes-esque things and have his way with everyone. Now, this season might seem a little different, but you got to factor him in terms of this matchup, because if you don't, you're living under a rock.
Yeah, you're getting my thoughts out almost exactly. You might know that I was on upgrade QB2 or CB2 spot all off season. We went and we upgraded defensive line. That's great. It didn't have to be one or the other for me, but somehow we just wanted to do one or the other. Mm-hmm. And we've had some pretty good returns, although I would say for the Texans game, it was spotty. And I think the Chiefs do have a better offensive line. So is our defensive line going to be able to get to Mahomes? Now, last year, we covered pretty well for a minute, and then we couldn't get pressure, and he'd run outside, and Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce or somebody would be wide open. So, even when he would hold the ball a little bit longer, he'd still end up making a play. So, as I said, this is a big test for this Bills team. Everything we think this Bills team is right now, if we lose this game, we might be thinking differently. Either way, if we win, we'll be thinking differently. If we lose, we'll be thinking differently about our defense.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you brought up Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill because those are the next two strengths on this list, and there's no surprise there. Travis Kelce's got a 91.4 PFF rating on this team, and I'm pretty sure that's the highest rating in general for the Kansas City Chiefs. And like Mahomes is Mahomes, Kelce is Kels. I think that's how you're supposed to pronounce his name. I'm pretty sure he did the Tyrod thing where he just randomly said, "Oh, by the way, my name is Travis Kels."
Yeah, I've been in the league for years now, but now I want to correct you because I don't know. I'm still saying it the wrong way because that's how I learned it.
Yeah, and I'm just like, well, I wish I would have known this sooner. But yeah, I'm just gonna keep calling you the wrong thing. Maybe that just fuels him, and that's why he's one of the arguably the best tight ends we're gonna ever see in our entire lives. But he's so far got 3 touchdowns this year, and not for nothing, but guess who's got more? Our guy Dawson Knox. So, I got to put that stat out there. But he's so good, he demands to be bracketed or extra attention, maybe double coverage, and because he's so elite. How do you think the Bills are going to stack or I guess cover Travis Kelce? Do you think they're just going to stick Milano, if obviously if he's healthy, just on him, leave those two together and just hope for the best, or what do you predict will happen here?
I wish I had an answer for you, but if I had that answer, I would be working for the Bills, I guess. But I have no idea. Milano is our best coverage linebacker, and he wasn't that effective. I mean, neither linebacker was that effective last year against any tight end. Mm-hmm. So, and you're talking about Kelce. I said Kelce again. I'm going to keep saying it. He's the level above everybody else, and I don't know. I don't have the answer. I don't know. I don't have anything for you there. There's somebody smarter than me that can have an answer for you there about maybe throwing an extra body at him, but I don't know.
Right. Well, maybe they do toss another body at Travis Kelce, but if you do that, then it just leaves an open, vacant spot for Tyreek Hill because he's the next weapon on here at an 88.2 PFF rating, and he's just so fast and he's a pretty good route runner. So even if you do double him, he can quite literally outrun the coverage, and that's a problem. So if you stick another person on Kelce, like that leaves everyone else to kind of be one-on-one. It's kind of like basketball, like as soon as I'm playing out there and I see someone else draw to me, I'm immediately looking up to see who's open, because if there's 2 people on one person, then it's just math, right? And unfortunately, if you're going to double one of their best players, they have a monster waiting all the way down in the field for Mahomes to use his big arm to just launch touchdowns. And those two connect all too often. And we saw what he did in this AFC Championship game to us, where he quite literally outran Tyron Johnson. And I don't know. Out of these 2 weapons, who are you most nervous about?
I think it'd be easier to double Tyreek Hill. Maybe you have one of the safeties, just kind of keep an eye on him and check him that way. Mm-hmm. But I think Kelce can eat you underneath over and over and over and over again. But oddly enough, we've been hearing some criticism about that Chiefs offense, and as good as they are, and right now they're not even playing to their potential, much like we're not either. Mm-hmm. Some of the criticism was they really don't have that much talent besides Kelce and Tyreek Hill. And say what you want about Merkley Hardman, but they just picked up Josh Gordon. So what is that worth? We don't really know, but he's athletic as hell. So I don't know.
Yeah, like you said, if I did know, we would be working for the Bills right now, hopefully. Imagine that kind of dream. Whew. And the last strength here, we're going to switch to the defensive side of the football, and that has to do with Tyron Matthew. Now, surprisingly, I thought he would have gotten a higher PFF rating, but he's got a 61.6 rating. And that's, I guess, kind of a head scratcher because he's, to me, a super smart, savvy player. Much like Hyde, he can blow up or prevent a big play from happening, and he's just great in defenses. You can move him around like a chess piece, and he's able to diagnose plays before they really develop. And not to mention, he's a leader on this defense. And when I forgot what week he was out, maybe week 1, but you could just tell that they missed him and his presence out there on the field. So Tyron Matthew, definitely someone Brian Daboll's got to look out for in terms of game planning, but he's a good one on that Chiefs defense.
Yeah, he's come a long way. And we knew when he got drafted he was super talented way back then, but as talented as he was just as immature. And, hanging out in the NFL with coaches and other veteran players, it can change your perspective on some things. And he certainly is not the same player that was drafted. If I remember right, there was a lot of hesitation on him just because of who he was. And I bet there's a lot of people who wish they could have picked him back then that missed on him.
Where did he get drafted again? Wasn't it Arizona?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about where he got drafted, and maybe this is before my cognitive football years really developed. But I will say, as much as I love Tyron Matthew, I love Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde more. Those two together are greater than Tyron Matthew, in my opinion. And if you're gonna give me Tyron Matthew or Sorensen, we got to pick Hyde and Poyer all day, every day over them. I know you're on the same boat as me.
I can't disagree with you there. And I nationally, outside of Buffalo, it's like a low-key secret that we have such good safeties. Like, people probably heard of them, but they don't really know how good they are. And I kind of like it that way.
Yes. See, this is what I'm talking about. Keep them a secret. Because if they start, I don't know. I don't think they be players like this, but when they start getting recognition, maybe they, you see some players kind of like take the foot off the gas, or, when players are in contract years, then just out of nowhere, oh my God, now they're doing great, and you pay them a lot of money, and then they just kind of go back to the mean. And I don't think Poyer or Hyde would be like that, because we've paid them and we know what they are in terms of their value for this team. And I love that they embrace that, okay, keep sleeping on us mentality. We'll see you on Sunday. I'm all about that.
I think McDermott has to get a lot of credit for that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Micah Hyde that we know today isn't the Micah Hyde that was a free agent from Green Bay. A lot of people, it's not the same player. And Jordan Poyer couldn't start in Cleveland and those bad Cleveland teams. He's a cast-off. They came to Buffalo. They got the situation. They got the coaching. They got the scheme. They got the culture. Everything around them created who they are today and how we know them. And because they weren't necessarily drafted as high, I think that all plays into keeping them secret, But, that's, I guess, the effect of good coaching.
Yeah. Well, that's going to wrap it up for the strengths of this team's, the Kansas City Chiefs team. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the weaknesses that maybe the Buffalo Bills can exploit on that Chiefs team. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. I got Vince Taylor from Buffalo on the Brain here on the Wandering Buffalo podcast, and we're going to wrap up this game preview of the Kansas City Chiefs. So we got to talk about these weaknesses of the Kansas City Chiefs. And no surprise here, but it's a lot to do with depth and defense. And we're going to start with the pass rush defense. And there's not a lot of depth here. They have Alex Okafor. I'm pretty sure he's the guy who got the football tossed in at his head by Josh Allen. So he's a He's someone I'm thinking about. Chris Jones, they kicked him out to play 5 tech, which is kind of strange to me because he's always been really good on the interior. And then outside of that, you got Jerron Reed, who's got like a 50 PFF rating, Tashawn Wharton, who's got a 50 PFF rating, Derek Nottie, who's got a 40 PFF rating, Colleen Saunders, who's got a 50 PFF rating, and then Mike Dana, who's got a 60 PFF rating. Oh, and on the other edge, they got Frank Clark, who's questionable for this game, but get this. He's got a 34.9 PFF rating. Like, do you remember when he was a very coveted free agent a couple of years ago, and now he's 35 PFF rating? Like, that's not good. But regardless, should be a good test in terms of this newly revamped Bills offensive line. So, Vince, how do you feel about this depth, this matchup, and just in general, your overall thoughts?
Chris Jones is a monster, and I don't care where they line him up. He's somebody that we need to keep our eyes on. But he is on the injury report today for the Chiefs. He did not practice. He has some type of wrist injury. I don't know what that means. I don't know if he's questionable. I don't know if he's got a designation on, but I know he didn't practice today because of some type of wrist injury. But he's the only one on that defensive line that really gives me concerns. On the other hand, I don't really love our offensive line that much either. Now, I liked it much better last week, but that's against the Texans, so I'm not quite sure how I'm supposed to feel about that. But the Spencer Brown experiment at right tackle and the Darrell Williams inside at right guard, it's making me – I guess I'm interested to see how that holds up. But, yeah, you're right. The Kansas City defense is not super deep. They're not playing very well. They're not getting to the quarterback. They're not causing a ton of turnovers. They're giving up a lot of points. We haven't hit our stride either. This is a place where if we do it against the Chiefs, it's going to feel so much better than doing it against the Texans.
Yeah, and I didn't know that Chris Jones was on the injury report. Maybe he hurt his wrist by punching someone else in the head by cheap shotting him again. I don't know, but I suspect that might be the real reason. But no, I respect Chris Jones a ton, and like I said, I do respect Steve Spagnuolo a lot for what he's done in the past, and I think he's going to be able to find a way to take advantage or maybe test this newly revamped offensive line. And Spencer Brown looked really, really good at right tackle, but I got a feeling that they're going to go after him or Ike Bacher, because I do like Ike Bacher, but he's consistent, I guess. He's not up and down like Ford or Feliciano, so definitely an area that we should definitely look out for. But in general, I don't know what it is, but I still feel good about this matchup. Maybe I got fan goggles on, but I do feel good about it. And I don't know if you want to add anything more to that before we move on.
Well, as we get closer to this game, if you would have asked me a week ago, I'm still saying the Chiefs are the best team in the AFC. I know their record isn't there yet. But I think it doesn't matter who 1 or 2 is. It's who's the best team in the AFC. It's either the Chiefs or the Bills. And we're going to be playing this week to figure out who it is. So it doesn't really matter who you want to argue for first place. This is pretty much for all the marbles. Now, I know if the Chiefs win, they're still digging themselves out of a hole, but they're still the best team in the AFC right now.
Yeah, and it's kind of like how I viewed the Patriots back in the day, and clearly I'm having drawing some parallels between this Chiefs regime and the old Patriots in terms of until we beat them, I'm not sure I believe it until I see it, and that kind of makes me upset. Just because this team's so good, and I need that W. I would like the W. I don't need it, but I really, really want it. So let's move on to the next weakness here, and that's their linebacking core. And this linebacking core has never been good for the Chiefs, and it's been like that for a while. And it's also might be a good spot for this Bills offense to focus their attack on. So maybe we might see some scheming that we saw on the Washington football team, because their linebacking core is very bad as well. And let's talk about their depth. They have Nick Bolton out there, a rookie. Some of you guys might know him because a lot of people went before we re-signed Matt Milano. Some people were saying, oh, the Bills might sign Nick Bolton, or draft Nick Bolton in the first round to replace him. And I saw some mock drafts out there, but I wasn't really about it. And so far he's been okay, I guess. He's got like a 46.8 PFF rating. Besides him, they have Anthony Hitchens, who's got a 40 PFF rating. Dorian O'Donnell, the best one, I guess, with a 74.2 PFF rating. Ben Nemian, 40 PFF rating. And then Darius Harris, who's got like a 59 PFF rating. So definitely not the greatest here, considering their starting linebackers aren't great. And then the depth behind them isn't moving the needle that much.
Kind of the same as Washington. Washington had a better defensive line, and their linebackers were pretty weak. Mm-hmm. And that's where we saw Beasley go off. Is that the game where he had 11 catches? I was there, so I did. Yeah. Maybe we see some Dawson Knox there too, if we can get him matched up with one of those linebackers. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think this is the game where we try to do some of the same things against that weaker linebacking core. But the defensive line for Washington was much better than the defensive line for this Chiefs. So I don't know. We're going to be passing the ball all day. We're either going to be trying to run up the score so we can keep a big lead, or we're going to be trying to play catch up. So I don't really anticipate a lot of running.
Yeah, and in that Washington game, you saw Josh become the Matador, is what I coined it as, because someone on that line was going to win, and they always seem to be coming from Cody Ford, who consequently is benched below the now, so he's not part of the starting five. But it always seemed like Josh was able to dodge 1 to 2 people that were coming at him and then just make a play out of it. I feel a lot better about this offensive line matchup against that defensive line matchup, so we can open up bigger plays to Knox and Beasley to attack those linebackers. And hey, I mean, Knox has scored a touchdown every game so far, and wouldn't it be great to have a tight end that could impact the game wearing a Bills uniform? I don't think I've ever seen one before, so that would be a true treat.
Yeah, you've not seen one before because we've not had one before. The best that we've had was Pete Metzelar's way back at him, in the Super Bowl era. And he was pretty good, but it wasn't like Pete Metzelar's was out there being Antonio Gates or Travis Kelce either. He was just pretty good. But we want to believe that Dawson Knox can develop into that guy. And, I don't know. This is the game where I think he gets another touchdown. I think he keeps the streak going. It's going to end at some point, but this game is going to be just so pass heavy. I think he gets another touchdown. Right.
And I'm all for it if he gets another touchdown, or if Beasley comes alive. Because, last game he didn't really have an impact. He only got 2 targets, 2 catches, and they kind of came late in that game against the Texans. But I got a good feeling Beasley's about to eat with the Chiefs here. Plus, he got a haircut, so you never know. You never know. Let's move on to the cornerback depth here, and this is definitely an area that the Bills should exploit, and it makes sense here. And I'm just going to go down the ratings, and the numbers are going to speak for themselves. Mike Hughes, he's got a 70 PFF rating, and to put it out there, I'm pretty sure 70 is like average. So think about it like that. And then I'll go down this list. So Chris Lamons, 59. L'Jarius Sneed, 58. DeAndre Baker, you might know him from, he was one of the 3 first-round picks for the Giants, and then he kind of got into off-field trouble and for robbery, I think, which It's kind of sad because, your first round pick. Don't ruin that. But he found his way to the Chiefs, and he's got a 63 PFF rating. Charvarius Ward is listed as questionable, and I'm pretty sure he's one of their starters. He's got a 46.8 PFF rating. And then Rashad Fenton is also listed as questionable at 66.3. So definitely below average cornerback room. And I hope they don't do what they did to the Bills last time around, where it just seemed like they got pretty handsy, and I think the refs eventually just kind of swallowed their whistles on that. But if we're looking in terms of a matchup, win, in terms of where we should exploit, this is got to be it. Our wide receiving core this year is, if not arguably better than last year, with the addition of Emmanuel Sanders and the exit of John Brown. Now, we do need these other weapons to step up. I'm talking to you, Gabriel Davis, because you haven't really been there since week 1, and I'm not really sure what's going on, but maybe this is a blessing in disguise, because Emmanuel Sanders is eating, and maybe he's eating into his snaps, but I need to see more production against these lower tier cornerbacks.
Mike Hughes was a former first-round pick. I'm not sure why Minnesota gave up on him so quickly, but they gave him to the Chiefs basically for swapping like a sixth. They swapped like great on Pitts or something. They pretty much gave him away, and I don't know why. But he's super athletic, and he's somebody that I remember when the move was made, I was like, why couldn't we make a move like that? But he's going to have his hands full no matter who he's guarding. If he's got to guard Sanders or if he's got to guard Diggs, he's got his hands full. Charvarius Ward actually is a pretty good corner as well. Mm-hmm. I kind of liken him to Levi. He always seems to be around the ball making tackles, I think. That's kind of my read on him. But there's not a lot of corners that I would feel confident about going up against our top 3 wide receivers. It's just a matter of letting plays develop and getting Josh time.
Yeah, and again, that comes back down to the offensive line, which, oh man, I'm so nervous about it. But the anxiety, it's like a good anxiety and a bad anxiety at the same time. Let's move on to the next weakness, and that's actually tight end. And you know what? I'll just bounce in the last two together: tight end and wide receiver depth. So much like the LA Rams, and how I believe Joe Marino on Locked On Bills described them, is that they're a star and scrubs kind of team. That's how I kind of view the tight end room for the Kansas City Chiefs. You have Travis Kelce, if you want to pronounce it like that, and then no one behind him. You got Blake Brell, Noah Gray, and Jody Forson. I know if you're listening to this, you've never heard any announcer ever mention their names in a Chiefs uniform, because I personally haven't. Maybe they have, and I'm just being a little harsh here, but we all know it's about Travis Kelce there. And then when it comes to the wide receiver room, it's all about Tyreek Hill. And I'm not going to sit here and knock like Mecole Hardman or Robinson, because I know they contribute to that team in terms of special teams, and I think Hardman has like crazy top end speed. So those two, yes, I imagine that they can contribute a little bit, but not as much as our ancillary weapons could. So I think we have the edge there on them in that room. And then outside of that, they have Marcus Kemp, 40 PFF rating. DeRice Fountain, who's got no PFF rating. Like, there's just nothing on him. Pringle, 58 PFF rating. And then Josh Gordon, who hasn't played in so long in the NFL that you're not really sure what you're going to get. But I don't think it's going to be that great, because he's been out, and the only thing he's done since getting out of the NFL is the fact that he's gotten older. So maybe that's a little harsh, but definitely questionable depth at the tight end and wide receiver rooms there.
Yeah, that's a lot of the criticism that I think that I'm aware of too. Is what I think you said. What did you say? Stars or scrubs? That's a really good way to say it. Top heavy, and then kind of I don't know what's behind them. And the Josh Gordon experiment, it's not a bad move. You catching him in week 5, if he pans out, that's amazing for them. I mean, it sucks for us, but I don't know. What can you expect? I guess nothing. He's going to get on the field for the first time against the Bills, and he'll probably get some targets. We can pretty much guarantee that. So I don't know.
Yeah, and we got to wrap up this segment here by me asking you, what are you most worried about here? And we put a Twitter poll out there in terms of what Bills Mafia and the listeners of this podcast are worried about, and 50% of the voters said offense. They're just worried about Mahomes, Kelce, I feel like I have to say it like that from now on. Tyreek Hill, Clyde's Edward-Helaire, I guess, and just in general that offensive output. They're worried about that. 21% of them are worried about their defense, and I can't fault them for that just because they are ranking pretty much second to last in total defense in almost all categories. And 28% of them are worried about coaching, so scheming, and penalties. Where do you find yourself in those 3 categories? What are you most worried about, Vince?
I think I worry about their offense scoring a lot of points. Even in the AFC Championship game, we had a lot going against us, but we were still able to score 24 points. That's a decent amount of points. We could move the ball. We had to work a lot harder to get there than they did. They could, they were scoring on 2 or 3 plays, and we would have to go, 7, 8, 9 plays down the field to get our points. And it was, I had to labor for it. And we need to be able to stifle that offense a little bit if we have any chance at all. I'm assuming they're going to get some decent amount of points too, but I guess our defense is what I'm most concerned about.
Yeah, and that makes sense, right? This defense has been clicking, and almost to 2019 form, or if anything, it is the 2019 form, maybe potentially better by the fact that we've had 2 shutouts now. And I'm really happy about the performance of the defense, but this is the first real test to see if this unit has grown from last year. Last year it was all about the offense. Josh Allen and all the Stephon Diggs, they can score at will. But when it came down to it, the defense was nowhere to be found, and most of the pieces are still the same there, and most of the pieces are still the same for the offense for Kansas City, except for a revamped offensive line, and you swap out Sammy Watkins for Josh Gordon. So in theory, it should be pretty close. So I don't know how the matchups are going to really shake out, but I'm definitely scared about how that offense led by Patrick Mahomes is going to perform on Sunday night, and I just don't want to go to bed upset. It's definitely something I'm worried about as this week unfolds. So I think that's a good place for us to really go into our second to final segment here, and that's things we want to see and things we don't want to see. So I'm going to let you start off here by talking about things you don't want to see, Vince. What don't you want to see?
Well, I don't want to see a Chiefs win.
Yeah,
Done.
Definitely.
I don't know. I don't want to see Patrick Mahomes lining us up for like 35 or 40 points. I feel like if we keep it somewhere, 28, 32 points, we'll be in the game. We need to get our points too, but if we can contain Patrick Mahomes, that's what I'd like to see, is him get stifled a little bit.
Right. And I guess what I want to see and what I don't want to see kind of folds into what you just said. But what I want to see, and I feel like a broken record because I've said this 2 or 3 times already, but I need to know that this pass rush is for real. We've seen Brandon Beane tossed all types of resources. money, draft picks. He's traded for players, signed free agents, all that good stuff. Well, I don't know if he's actually traded for anyone, but you get the point here that there's been a lot of resource allocation in that room, and I need to see that it's paying off. We need some return on investments, and we definitely saw some impact against the Dolphins, but that's the Dolphins. This is the Kansas City Chiefs, and they got a revamped offensive line that's playing actually a lot better than I anticipated. So this is going to be another good matchup for this newly revamped defensive line, and I hope that they can contain and or put a ton of pressure on Mahomes so he does something crazy in terms of negative plays. I don't want to see him do anything crazy offensively. But what I also don't want to see is offensive struggles. It was a huge letdown in the AFC Championship game that Allen and the team couldn't move the ball. It seemed like the only time we actually were near the red zone was when I think Hardman, I believe, or Robinson, I forgot who their punt returner is, fumbled the ball, and then Josh was able to do like a dump-off pass to Knox to get into the end zone, and it was like quite literally a five-yard play, maybe at most. I don't want our points to come from plays like that. I need to see legitimate points that this offense is much improved, and we know the running game is much better, and that the Chiefs are bad at defending the run here. So I'm looking for a more balanced attack, for us to run the football very, very well, like we've seen thus far, and I don't want to see no fumbles, because Singletary, I don't know what he's doing, but he's putting the football down quite recently, and it's going to be a wet game, allegedly, so I don't want to see that. I know I spit out a lot of things there, but clearly I've been thinking about this matchup for quite some time, and you're probably in the same boat too, but I won't speak for you.
Yeah, Singletary, and you said it all perfectly. Singletary worries me a lot, and I am on Team Singletary so much. I love Motor. I love the way he plays. I know he's got some limitations, but I just love that guy so much.
Oh, yeah.
Seeing putting on, it's like, okay, you're getting away with it, fumbling out of bounds, not getting the ball turned over. Dude, when does it sink in that you got to do that a little bit better? So I'm concerned there. But to your point about the defensive line, yes, you said it absolutely perfectly. Way back in April, where we passed on getting a corner and we got 1 and 2 defensive ends, this was his plan. This is what Bean wanted to do. So this is like no more dress rehearsal. Like, you're going against the Chiefs now. It's time to pay off. And, like I said earlier, we were 13-3 and in the AFC Championship last year. If we were 9-7 and we're having the same year, do we feel the same? Or do we have the same sense of optimism? No, we do not. So, yeah, there's a lot riding on this game, and my mental stability, I think, is right there on the line too.
Right. So I'm going to just push your mental stability just a tad bit more here. Why don't you give us your game day prediction against the Kansas City Chiefs? And I'll preface this by saying, and yes, I'm throwing you underneath the rug here, Justin, but he predicted a loss. He said, for the same reasons of, he doesn't believe it until it happens. And I understand that, very similar to the Patriots thing that I referenced earlier. But, he came out and told me it was a loss. So where is your head at? Are you more with Justin here?
I was until last week. And I don't know why. I don't think the Houston game should have had this much effect on my psyche, but I'm feeling super optimistic. I think it's going to be like a 31-28 Bills win. And that is so out of character for me, because I've been saying all offseason long, we didn't do enough. We didn't close the gap. Here I am predicting a win. And maybe I'm just going with my heart right now, but that's the way I feel.
Right. And shocker here, but I'm actually going to predict a Bills win. I don't know what it is, but I feel like this Bills offense, we haven't seen the best Bills offense yet. I know what it can be. We've seen much improvement in the running game, and I know what the passing game could be. And I know that this defense is playing significantly better, and they're showing us that, hey, we're clicking, we're getting back to form. If those two things can sync up simultaneously for this game, forget about it, in my opinion. So I'm going to roll the dice here, and I think we're going to hit 7. I'm feeling real good about this game, and maybe I'm an idiot, which, is quite possible here. But I just feel good about it, and I was a little hesitant to say it originally, but the more and more I talk about it, the more and more I'm talking myself into the fact that I can see this team winning this game and closing that gap. So, yeah, let's go.
It's
Bills.
on tape. It is on tape. You can't back out of it now. We're locked
Definitely
in.
not. We are locked in. Shocker here. I'm going to predict the Bills win. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up for tonight's episode. Thanks for sticking around. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and review our podcast, as well as Vince Taylor on the Buffalo on the Brain podcast. Vince, we're always looking for great people to join our show, and Justin's typically on here too. So you can always find us, as well as other amazing content, by looking into the Built-in Buffalo Network. Where can the people find you?
I am at Podcast Vince on Twitter. That's my only social media site that I have. But you can find my podcast, Buffalo on the Brain, every Monday on the Built-in Buffalo Podcast Network.
And as always, you can find Justin on social media platforms by searching up JGods22. And you can find me predicting all the Bills W's by searching 2 Changs. Let's go, Bills. Let's go get this W. I'm sick and tired of being in the Chiefs' shadow. Let's get it. Go Bills.
Go Bills.